Okay, so welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm going to just do a small talk and then we're going to press on with some statistics, etc. After that, our special guest Sharron will be doing a talk to explain the campaigning she's been done on behalf of her daughter, Caitlin. Now, before I start, I want to start off with a confession. Many years ago, a few months after I'd qualified to become an ADI, I was getting a lot of first-time passes. I was getting some great feedback from parents and the youngsters themselves. And I thought I'd made it. I thought I was at least above average instructor, like I'm sure most of us do at some point. Fast forward to where I am now, and I look back and I realize how wrong I was. Not because I didn't care, not because I wasn't passionate about helping people with their driving, but because I simply didn't know. I didn't realize, and you may say it's obvious, but I didn't realize at the time what effect of driving and the risk involved with driving when people first pass their tests, what effect that had. And I didn't realize the enormity of it. And if I had, I would have done things, I'm sure, in a much better way at the time. So that's one of the reasons I want to use what I've learned moving through learner drivers, business drivers, advanced drivers, older drivers. I've done to all the age ranges. And I've picked up a lot of understanding. And that's really why I'm going to just pass things along there. So we as ADIs are in a unique position. We're the only road safety professional really that gets a chance to spend hours in the company of these young drivers. And not only can we, of course, help with their skills, but if we do it in the right way, we can also help with their mindset. It's easier said than done, of course, but we've got a lot of time where we can persuade them of certainly update them with risks and things like this. So please engage with this, with the chat. If you've got any thoughts, put your thoughts across. I'll try and cover them, but if not, we will try and leave time for questions at the end there. And I would say when Sharron does her part, if you could sort of listen with your minds and hearts and just realize what the impact of losing the daughter can have on people. So we all have a big renewed push on making things better. Okay, so on with the show. Young drivers are overrepresented in KSI crashes on rural roads. Now, for those that are not sure, KSI is killed or seriously injured. There's a graph on the screen now for those of you who can see it, and it's for all drivers other than the 17 to 24-year-old. That's the normal age range for young drivers. Now, so for all other drivers, the orange is these are crashes, KSI crashes in urban areas for the orange there. It's 55%. In rural roads, and of course, for 55%, a lot of those won't be car occupants. It will be vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, etc. On the rural roads, often because of the high speeds, 42%, and the motorways, safest of all with just 4%. When you look at the younger drivers and compare that, you can see that they are overrepresented on that green, that light green, which is now gone up to 49% as against 48%. So younger drivers have a lot of collisions in the countryside. In 2024, 30% of young car driver KSI casualties were in single vehicle collisions. So of course that means, well, not necessarily, but usually that's loss of control without any other vehicle being involved, coming off the road, which is very common for newly qualified drivers. 36% of single vehicle collisions. Also between 2020 and 2024, 17% of young car drivers involved with these serious collisions did not wear seatbelts, and that was the highest number of all age groups. And of course, without a seatbelt on, particularly a high-speed crash where somebody's hit a tree or something, you're far more likely to leave the vehicle through the windows. And I once spoke to a fire and rescue professional who said he'd been to many, many, unfortunately, serious collisions, and he'd never come across anybody that had survived if they left the vehicle. So seat just shows how important seatbelts are. And this one's percentage of KSI casualties from collisions involving at least one younger driver. So you can see, again, the 70 to 24-year-olds, if you can see this, are largely overrepresented in that. So 33% males and 17% females in that group are the largest group. The other age groups are people killed or seriously injured in collisions where at least one is a younger driver. So often the damage is to themselves, unfortunately. As it says, with single vehicle collisions, that would sort of make sense. Now, young drivers are particularly vulnerable to crashes on rural roads and at night with passengers in the vehicle, where that vehicle loses control and hits an obstacle, as we said, such as a tree. And that's from the annually published road safety statistics published on the government website. And you can see the most dangerous hours for, I have to look at the big screen because I can't even read it myself here. Most dangerous hours for younger drivers tend to be from about 10 in the evening to 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when most have their serious collisions. And of course, ADIs can teach skill. We don't have that much of an impact on these other things here. And those type of collisions are largely also dependent on impairment, distractions, seatbelts, fatigue. But I think we, in my opinion anyway, looking back on what I didn't achieve at the time, I think we have a responsibility really with every young driver and passenger to make sure they understand what the risks are, cover these subjects, and offer them some coping strategies wherever possible. So we're going to sort of, on this part, before I ask Sharron to take over, I just want to look at certainly when I was in the road safety casualty reduction team for Hampshire, this was the type of collision which came onto our sort of radar the most, where a young driver is going along a rural road and loses control on a corner. And I'm sure that the majority of you know all there is to know about why that can happen, but I'm just going to cover it for those that don't, just very, very briefly. So, of course, if you're coming along a rural road, national speed limit at 60 miles an hour, and you're not focusing, you're not concentrating, you suddenly realize there's a really tight bend there, the car is going to want to go on in the straight line, of course. So you hit the brakes to try and bring the speed down, and that sends all the weight to the front two wheels. And of course, if we want to maintain control of a vehicle, we need to use much more gentle progressive braking so that the weight's not shifted so quickly and the momentum's not in that straight line, because braking sends the weight to the front wheels like a box of tissues on your rear parcel shelf. It will come flying forward if you brake heavily. The only thing that's going to get that vehicle around the corner are the two front tires, each of which have, I'm advised, about the size of a human handprint in touch with the road. So if you look at your hands and therefore that's the grip you've got on tires on the road, it's quite frightening that amount of grip with those two front tires is all that's steering that vehicle around the corner, with a ton of metal or thereabouts and maybe 4 people in that. Now, obviously, as you steer around the corner, the weight shifts to the right. again, box tissues slides to the outside of the bend. So the last thing we want to do on a corner is, of course, I know this is obvious to most, but I'd still want to cover it, is brake and steer at the same time, because the weight shift is taking the stability away from the car and putting a lot of the weight on that front offside wheel. So now you've got a lot of weight, or most of the weight, probably, certainly the majority of the weight on one tire about the size of your hand. And then it's unsurprising if it doesn't quite make it around the corner and comes across to the other side of the road, or hits a tree, or goes over the side there. Now, for most of you will know about limit points, and when we planned this, a lot of people said to me about how they teach limit points, which is fantastic. And if you want to know more about cornering, I would really recommend, as some people have said to me, Roadcraft. It's got a whole chapter in cornering, and it talks about limit points and stability and all these things. But for anybody that doesn't know about limit points, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just the way to think about it is, as you're approaching this corner, let's say the one where that grey car's braking, it's a tight bend. From a distance, you're approaching at, say, 60 miles an hour. And you can look at the very furthest bit of road you can see to be clear. We sometimes use the white lines. If there's dotted the white lines, you can look at that white line. Now imagine that white line is a brick wall. So of course, if there's a brick wall there, you're going to be braking progressively so that when you get nearer to the brick wall, you can easily stop before you hit it. As you approach that bend, that brick wall at some point will start to move away from you. Then you don't need to brake anymore. You just follow it round, of course. Now, if it's a really tight bend like that one in the middle, you will get quite close to the corner before that brick wall moves, before you see further around the corner. So therefore, you've probably brought your speed down maybe as low as 30, even 20 miles an hour. That's what tells you the best speed for that corner. Whereas if it's a much more sweeping bend, you may have only got down to about 50 miles an hour, and already the brick wall's beginning to move around the corner, or the last bit of road you can see is beginning to move. So again, you've set the speed for the road. So that's the way to think about it. As I say, if you've not come across it, and most of you have, I'm sure, Roadcraft is a great book. So key takeaways on that: assess the correct speed, of course, for drivers before the bend, brake in the straight for the bend, and then be smooth with the braking and steering. Pretty obvious. For ADIs, I use something like you hear on trains: see it, sort it, whatever it was. I can't remember what they say on the trains now, where they found some unattended luggage. But see it, set it, steer it. Read the bend, set the speed before turning, drive smoothly through. So that's just given an overview particularly for the people that haven't really come across it too much. And then what I want to play now is, before we hand over to Sharron, this is Sharron's daughter, Caitlin. It's a video I actually did for Sharron a year or so ago. And the background music, it's quite an emotional video overall. The background music's from my son, who's a musician. And I'm just going to play literally about a third of it or less. So it just take about a minute, but it sets the scene for what we're going to hear next, I think. So hopefully you will hear the sound. Let me know if you can't hear the sound. Hear the sound, everybody?
If tomorrow starts without me, there's something you should know. While I hold you close, never let you go. Tell me you'll be happy, as happy as can be, when you start to dream how our life would be. With more time, we'd live 1,000 lives, so please don't cry for me.
So that's just about a third of it. So now I will move on to just before we go to Sharron, who she is coming up next, but this is actually Sharron who made a video for BBC Breakfast. And again, this just introduces what she's going to talk about.
Nearly every day for the last 7 years, Sharron has sat by her daughter Caitlin's grave.
Just quiet in the house without her. She turned to me and she asked, do I look okay, Mum? And I said yes. And then as she left the house, as I looked at the door, I just saw the long black hair the back of her head as she shut the back door. And that was the last time that I saw her alive.
15 minutes after she walked out the door, Caitlin was killed. She'd accepted a lift from a friend who lost control of her car. It collided with an oncoming van.
The impact it has on a family is just unbelievable. I was just aching for Caitlin. And that yearning for her will never go away. I have found my way of coping with focusing on the campaign that I do in memory of Caitlin.
Caitlin's friend, the driver, was also killed in the crash. She'd only passed her test 4 months earlier. Sharron's campaigning for better controls over what newly qualified drivers can do.
Okay, so that was just a short snippet of that one. And now, Sharron, over to you if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, thank you, Graham. I'd just like to say thank you for inviting me to talk about my campaigning this evening. So thank you for inviting me to this webinar. And yeah, I'd like to just say that I just want to take this opportunity to speak about my campaigning for the safety of young novice drivers and their peer-age passengers and other road users too that are affected and devastated through young driver crashes. And I'd like to start by explaining a little bit of background on why I am speaking this evening. And I just want to say as well that I am reading from notes because I don't want to miss out any important information that I want to share with you this evening. So forgive me for reading from notes. Just to explain a little bit about Caitlin, my daughter, she was a very sweet, quiet homebody. She was very shy, and we were very close. She loved her music, and she had really good choice in music as well. She liked Fleetwood Mac and Debbie Harry and David Bowie. So yeah, she had a really good choice of music. And she loved her cat Molly as well that she got for her 14th birthday. So moving on now to Friday the 14th of July in 2017. Tragically, Caitlin was killed at the age of 18 as a passenger in her female friend's car. Her friend who was driving was aged 18 and had passed her test just 4 months previously. The crash happened while the girls were travelling on a wet rural road in Cumbria while they were on their way for an evening meal. So there were 3 girls in the car. They were all 18. And tragically, 15 minutes into the journey, the newly qualified driver lost control on a bend on the wet rural road. And she wasn't speeding, but through her inexperience, she'd entered the bend too fast for her experience of driving. And with this, she lost control and the car spun onto the opposite carriageway. Tragically, the car spun into the pathway of a van driven by a 52-year-old man, and a horrific crash happened. My daughter Caitlin took the full impact of the crash into the front passenger door, and she was killed, as was the driver. They were killed on impact. The back seat passenger survived and spent 4 months in hospital recovering. And the van driver also has lifelong injuries as well as the backseat passenger. So there was no breaking of any laws. The crash was down to the inexperience of the novice teenage driver. And the coroner ruled this at the inquest in September 2018. And at the inquest, I asked the coroner for a preventing future deaths report to be written to the Department for Transport, calling for graduated driving licensing to be implemented. And we were so relieved that the coroner agreed to do this. And Caitlin's case was the first ever to receive a preventing future deaths report recommending that GDL is implemented nationwide. And from this one crash alone, there was 4 families' lives that were devastated. So this is just from one crash. There's 4 families' lives have been devastated and changed forever. But what I want from this evening is to make you all aware of everything that I was sadly unaware of that evening. And my hope is that you will take from this evening some important information that I wish someone had told me about before Caitlin got into that car that evening. You know, if we had known a lot of what I now know, that crash wouldn't have killed my daughter, as we as parents wouldn't have let that journey take place. And can I please just add as well that, you know, don't think that, well, this will never happen to me or my family, or, you know, this won't happen to my child, because it can happen to anyone, and I'm proof of this. You know, Caitlin herself couldn't drive, but she's a victim of a young driver crash. And people presume as well, oh, they must have been doing something wrong when you say that there were teenagers involved in a crash. But in most cases, this isn't the case. It's inexperience that causes the crash. I now know that my daughter's death was avoidable and preventable, and I was made aware of this fact by the road safety charity Break shortly after Caitlin's death. I reached out to Break about 6 weeks after Caitlin had been killed, and their support has been absolutely fantastic, and I don't know what I would have done without them. So my goal now is to highlight the need to urgently improve the driving licensing system, to update it, because I feel in the UK we have an outdated driving licensing system compared to other countries. And since Caitlin's death, I've been researching proven safety precautions for young novice drivers and their peer age passengers. And after the inquest, I then decided to set up Caitlin's campaign on, and we released it or launched it on what should have been Caitlin's 20th birthday. And that fell through Break's Road Safety Week as well, which is in November, and Caitlin's birthday is November the 23rd. And it fell during, and quite a lot of years it's fallen during Break's Road Safety Week. So it was an appropriate date to launch Caitlin's campaign on. And since I've initiated as well and created another campaign group as well for all bereaved parents that believe that their child would still be alive if we had graduated driving licensing. So the group that I created, and I named it Forget Me Not Families Uniting, because I do feel that road crash victims are forgotten by government. So I thought that was an appropriate name. And uniting, because us parents are uniting together to campaign to the government and lobby the government to get our voices heard for road crash victims. So the first thing that I had never heard of before Caitlin was killed is a law called graduated driving licensing. And many people I speak to have never heard about this law either until I tell them about it and why I can't campaign for it. So graduated driving licensing is a form of a phased licensing system that introduces various requirements on new drivers, and we sometimes shorten it to GDL. You've probably just heard me saying GDL. So as I say, it introduces various requirements on new drivers to support them through the early driving career when they are at their greatest risk of injury and injuring others as well. So it encourages a more varied practice for during the learning phase, and then targets known risk situations, such as carrying period passengers, and it imposes safeguards for a short period after they have passed their test. And we like to call them safeguards because the government tend to use negative language when they speak about graduated driving licensing. They tend to say restrictions, and they aren't restrictions, they're safeguards, because what they do is save lives. The only people that are restricted are those people that are killed in young driver crashes, such as my daughter Caitlin. She's restricted from living the rest of her life, and that's what we always say to government when they use negative language. So language is very important, actually. So this law is in many other countries and has reduced collisions and trauma from collisions involving young drivers by between 20 to 40%. And we know this through many decades of research. We also know that the most effective element of a GDL system is the passenger safety precaution, and will have the biggest impact on saving lives if it was implemented. So how I like to think of a phased licensing system is that it's similar to an apprenticeship in the workplace. So we have safeguards for young people in other areas of life. So why not for novice or learner drivers? Because a car is a dangerous piece of machinery. So let's train them, then have a training period before more responsibilities are given to them, as other people's lives are literally in their hands, and cars can kill in seconds, as we know. Just through one mistake, one simple mistake can kill people in seconds. So we know that immediately after young people pass the driving test, they are at the point of greatest risk. Another fact that I want to raise awareness of is that with every extra same age passenger a young newly qualified driver carries, the crash risk increases by up to 4 to 5 times. So you add one peer age passenger, you double the risk. Add 2 peer age passengers, you triple the risk. Now, I never knew this, and I found out too late for my daughter. So to reduce this, what we are calling for, our campaigning group and me, as I've been campaigning now for the last 8 years since I set up Caitlin's campaign. So what we're calling for and recommending is that teenage novice drivers don't carry their peer age friends as passengers for at least 6 months after passing their driving test. We want them to gain experience driving solo or with an older experienced driver first. And just to quote Dr. Sarah Jones from Public Health Wales, who has researched GDL and novice drivers for many years now. I think it's about 18 years, I think she told me, that she's done the research for now. She states that the most dangerous thing a teenager can do is to be a passenger in another teenage driver's car. So that's quite a strong statement, isn't it? Quite a frightening statement, actually. And research from the AA of 17 to 21-year-olds to not carry peer age passengers for 6 months after passing the test could save 58 lives a year. Now, to put this into perspective, that's at least 2 secondary school classes of teenagers. So the next time, if you're in a school, if you look at 2 classes of teenagers, that's how many could be saved from being, killed every year. That's annually, yeah. Just through not carrying passengers for 6 months. So a fact I was also unaware of was that one of the leading causes of death in our younger generation is road traffic collisions. I think suicide's the leading cause, and then it's road traffic collisions. And road traffic collisions are a bigger threat to young people than drugs, gun, and knife crime. Young drivers make up 7% of all licence holders, but are involved in 1/5 of all killed and seriously injured. Worldwide, road traffic collisions are the leading cause of death to young people aged 5 to 29-year-olds. But I want to stress too, what I want to stress too is that over 70% of deaths due to young driver crashes aren't the young driver, but actually the young passengers and other road users, such as passengers, people on bikes, pedestrians. So, that figure is extremely high. 70% aren't actually the driver, when the government actually only ever speak about the young driver. So something else that I was totally unaware of was also the brain development in our adolescent children. And research shows that at the age of 18, areas of the human brain that are responsible for information and impulse control are still developing. So youngsters are still maturing, and the rational part of a teenager's brain isn't fully developed until around age 25. Now, this can't be altered by training or education, and it's not their fault, it's how the brain develops, it's nature. But due to this, young drivers show poorer attention, are less able to judge appropriate speed for circumstances, such as wet roads, bad weather conditions, entering a bend in a road, and stopping distances. So the combination of youth and inexperience puts young drivers at a higher risk of crashing. So the other thing that I was unaware of was the rural roads danger to young drivers. And you'll be able to see on the screen the rural roads real danger, the Caitlin's message information for parents. And I, as a parent in 2017, was totally unaware of these dangers on rural roads. The evening that my 18-year-old daughter Caitlin was killed on a local rural road in Cumbria. I didn't know that rural roads had the highest number of collisions involving young novice drivers. I was under the common misperception that motorways were more of a danger and risk to lives on roads. In fact, many young people underestimate the dangers rural roads pose. So I came up with an idea of an information page full of advice for parents and young drivers. And with the full support of Edmund King from the AA Charitable Trust, we together produced these Caitlin message information pages. So the first page is an imagined letter from Caitlin saying to take care driving, so you have a future, as hers was taken from her. And the second page is a list of important facts called Caitlin's Tips on how to stay safe on rural roads, and advice on not carrying your friends as passengers until you feel more confident to do so. So my advice would be to remember that most crashes involving young drivers occur when they are socialising, and especially over weekends. We know that crashes more commonly occur during the early hours of the morning or late at night for young drivers. And to talk to teens about why they shouldn't carry their friends in the car, as even a conversation can distract a young novice driver. But with the law that we are wanting implementing of not carrying passengers for 6 months, you will be allowed to drive with an older, experienced driver. So as well, the 6 months that we're asking for, it's a small sacrifice to make, really, of just not carrying passengers for 6 months, peer age passengers. And I would just say, for anybody, please remember Caitlin's case. Also, advice to teenagers that I think would be really helpful as well would be, if they ever feel unsafe in a car, with their friends, to speak up, and just to advise them to say anything like they feel sick, or they need to go to the toilet, or they just want to get out if they feel in a difficult situation. But more information on everything I've spoken about can be found online in the new website, the Protection Drivers website. And we've got on the screen some downloadable slides on there that anybody can download and share anywhere that they want to. So they're the green slides. And also on the Protection Drivers website, Cumbria Police have produced some information pages as well for parents of teenagers that are learning to drive, and they can be downloaded as well from the Protection Drivers website. We've also got, have we got the slides, Graham, with the brake information on? The percentages of brake?
Probably not, I'm afraid. No.
No, that's fine. I'll just
Put that
talk
one up.
through them. I just wondered if we had them on the slides. That was not. So just some results that were released maybe a month ago, something like that, from Break, the road safety charity, from a recent research survey report that they did on young driver safety. Now, 3,000 people were surveyed, and I was so pleased with the amount of support this research shows from the public. And it's really encouraging that 77% support a stronger licensing system in Britain, which is GDL. 73% think it's okay for a young, newly qualified driver to not carry peer-age passengers for a few months after passing the driving test. And 79% of people think the government has a responsibility to act on safeguards for young drivers. But worryingly, 54% of 18 to 24-year-olds know a young person who has been in a crash. So that research report was really, really informative, and as well, really encouraging to see that a lot of people are getting on board and, you know, calling for and supporting a safer licensing system, graduated driving licensing. And the thing is, you know, if the government aren't going to implement these safeguards for our younger generation, we must ourselves do everything that we can to help keep them safe. So I just want to thank you for listening to me, and I hope that it's helped in some small way with listening about Caitlin's case and why I campaign. And I hope it helps as well with teaching teenagers learning to drive, you know, and for after passing their test as well. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, Sharron. Certainly
Thank you.
when I first met you or talked to you online, I was, you know, I'd been going along my road safety professional job for many years in various guises, and when I finish at the end of the day, I go home and forget about it. And although I did come across these type of situations, when you really hear it, the way you put it, and Caitlin's everything that's online about Caitlin, and when I put that video together, it just really, really hit home that, gosh, you know, that could have been me, that could have been any one of us, and that's why these conversations are so important, because it won't make a massive difference, but it's raising the awareness. I certainly would approach my time as a driving instructor a slightly different way. I would have spent much more time talking to parents, much more time on the rural roads. And I know a lot of there's tremendously good driving instructors out. And just by being here, the ones here tonight are probably some of the best, because at least they have an interest in this. The thing that worries me, there's a lot out there who they just want to get people through the test. So it strikes me that GDL, which I wasn't convinced about before I met you, for the same reasons that the government seemed to be a bit anti it, but suddenly I've changed my mind, because I'm thinking if training's not working, you know, I don't want. The other thing, when you showed me the website that you had and the number of parents on there, you showed me a picture of all the parents that have gone through this, and you look through the pictures, and you know, it's just really very emotional, and I just think this conversation is really important for that. I think they've. Sorry, I'll hand it over if anybody's got any questions for you in a second. But they've introduced GDL in Northern Ireland. Has that started yet? Do you know?
The 1st of October, that's coming in.
Right. Okay. So we'll be able to see over there if that makes a difference, which hopefully it will.
Yeah.
But of course, for every person that goes through this terrible situation of, something bad happening on the roads, that's not all, because there's countless more near misses where somebody's just been lucky, just missed a tree, just missed an oncoming vehicle, but still lost control. So it's far more than what you read about. And I
Yeah.
really think you're doing a fantastic job, of a
Thank
very brave
you.
job of pushing this forward.
If tomorrow starts without me, there's something you should know. While I hold you close, never let you go. Tell me you'll be happy, as happy as can be, when you start to